Greetings. Today's talk focuses on the fact that we're conservatively estimating that Tesla will sell 1 million cars in China in 2020. And uh, usually we try to cover numerous topics. We do have our second topic being that we'll follow up today to also take a look at the 95,000 cars produced in the United States um, for the period ending July 1 as our other follow-up, and then our health tips. Um, Unfortunately, we have a little sound technical difficulty here, which is now solved. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, thanks for joining us. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. Now, part of our strategy here is we try to do research in terms of what's available and include that research to sort of make conclusions on what we think happens with Tesla, etc. Today's talk really emphasizes the fact that there's some really strange doings in China, and this is kind of a third in our China series to really get our arms around kind of what's going on in China and what the potential is for Tesla in the process. So today's show's focus is on the fact that we believe that Tesla will sell 1 million cars in China in 2020. And that million cars in 2020 is on the way to about 4 million cars a year by 2025, based on the process the Chinese are using currently to try to get fully into the EV world. So I wanted to throw out a few data points that are mind-blowing and that I'm kind of stunned by. First of all, let's review the fact that China had 2 million sales in EVs, or will have 2 million EV sales this year, number one. Number two, the Chinese goal is that they sell approximately 23 million cars per year, and by 2025, their goal is to have 20% of that be EVs being sold. So we're talking about 7 million cars a year by 2025 is the goal that the Chinese have that are electric. The third issue that we wanted to cover is that China has decided that instead of just, there's been a process in place where you put a high tariff in, you then fund local companies that are allowed to sort of cheat on patents and then leverage those patents in order to get their businesses going, which is what happened with BYD. And so you have a very structured process that allows Chinese companies to grow into a business, be successful, and then unleash that success on the rest of the world, even if it means copying patents. And because Tesla's patents are open and they've been able to copy for a long time, it suggests that perhaps that process was not really working at the speed that they wanted to accomplish when it came to EVs. The third, so the bottom line is that the Chinese government put out, from what we can assess, about $10 to $15 billion, and the goal was to fund as many as 100 EV solutions across a large number of companies, and the goal there was to say, hey, let's grow our own domestic production for EVs and then leverage that. And so basically that has not worked out. In the case of NIO and other manufacturers, the vehicles being delivered all suffer the same challenge, which is the battery technology is going to take multiple years to develop, and China doesn't want to wait that long, hence the move to assist Tesla in building its first factory. And based on the number of vehicles that need to be produced, a year by 2025, we believe that there'll be 2 or 3 more Tesla factories that are put up between now and then. And the factories that are available we believe will be running at huge productive numbers. Um, so, uh, by the way, thank you all, Sean, et cetera, for all the questions you guys are posing on the screen. We will answer those at the end of the show, and appreciate all the hellos as usual. So I have to admit that I'm seeing all the numbers that the Chinese government is planning, how many vehicles are going to be sold, et cetera. At the current pace, China should have between 2 and 3 million EVs sold in 2020, and that number continues to increase. And it's amazing some of the techniques they're using. For example, there's a 3 million waiting list to get a license plates in China. 100,000 new license plates are issued each year, and of those, only 60,000 of them will be required to be EVs. So there are only 40,000 license plates that'll be available to non-EV vehicles over the next year. So I just think that, some of the methods they're using like this to increase the EV usage is pretty amazing. Another data point is that you're allowed to drive 7 days a week versus 6 days if you have an EV vehicle. As we all know, Tesla has the largest charging network in the country. So even if you choose a Tesla with a lower battery run, you still have supercharger ability to go on. So I have to admit there's something in psychology called cognitive dissonance. And basically you see all these statistics and they're so mind-blowing that they can't be right. And so therefore you have to say, hey, this is ridiculous. So what we're kind of suggesting basically is that Tesla could shut down all of its operations in the US and Europe and only concentrate on China and double revenue and sales every year for the next 5 to 7 years. And that's mind-blowing. One of the ways to slow down the train of what I'm suggesting is that one could say, well, where do you get the money to put up all those plants, et cetera? And the answer is that the CapEx and all the other issues that Tesla has in the United States with getting funding to execute its plan is kind of non-existent because the Chinese government is providing financing for all of it along the lines of the Chinese math that we talked about on many occasions. So, in essence, once you're producing jobs in China and you have a product that the Chinese have deemed to be exactly what's needed in the space, you now have the potential to be able to build a factory that you own and systematically clean up when it comes to all manner of execution. So in general, my point after running these numbers to you is that by 2025, China wants 7 million EVs sold that year and ramping up to that between now and then. If you look at how the EV market has played out both in Europe and the United States, we're just targeting for 1 million sales to happen next year. Tesla needs to have about 40 to 45% market share. If Tesla achieves the market share that it's achieved in the United States and Europe in EV over that time period, do not be surprised to hear that without any sales anywhere else in the world, Tesla is selling 1.2 million vehicles in China, which is, all I gotta say is that's pretty mind-blowing stuff because of how that affects revenue, how that affects the stock, et cetera. And then the mere 500,000, 600,000 vehicles sold in the rest of the world by Tesla in that time frame is almost irrelevant. And the numbers support it. You guys can send notes back of evil comments, but please review the data before you argue against it, because I agree with you that the statistics are mind-blowing and make no sense whatsoever, but the problem is that they're actually doable. And then, perhaps one of the latter part of arguments on this whole thing is you can say, hey, this isn't going to happen because they're talking about producing 3,000 cars in November or December of 2019, and that's entirely possible. But if you can build a factory from zero to to ready to equip machines in 6.5 months, I would not put it past them to get production going, by August or September of this year. And once that production starts moving, do not be surprised to see China mirroring its U.S. production of Tesla within a month or two of the start of production. So there are some very interesting things that are coming in right now in terms of data points. And I want to say let's be skeptical, and I'm actually looking forward to the fact that I'm saying Tesla sells 1 million cars in China next year. That's 50 billion in sales, and that number kind of doubles every year for about a 5-year period. And that's just China. Forget about the rest of the world. If the rest of the world starts adopting in that fashion, we'll see how big the numbers can get. But I think it says good things about where the stock price ends up. It says good thing about where the company ends up. And I'd say the biggest argument against all of this is, where do you get the capital to do it? And the answer is, when you've got a partner like the Chinese, and they don't give a hoot about what's going on in Europe or America, and they're concentrated on how they're going to manage their own home market and the challenges they're dealing with, pollution and the transition to electric, which they can produce in large amounts, etc. I would say this is going to be kind of crazy. I saw a comment come across from Bill B saying, is China going to supply the rest of the world? I kind of, based on the numbers that we're seeing, China's goal is really not to service the rest of the world. Their goal is to get EVs built to service their own market. And the rest of the world is completely irrelevant to them. And so I kind of now see why Elon is talking about building multiple factories in different locations in China. Because with the Chinese government as a partner, I hate to say it because it's so embarrassingly stupid, but basically with China as a partner, Tesla has an unlimited checkbook with which to grow sales and revenue in China. And the Chinese government is not at all worried about all the accounting and process standards the United States has, because when those plants are built on land that they control and those employees are getting paid, all those numbers that they have control of, results in kind of this, I want to say, totally crazy analysis. So I would, there are people, including Josh, that are saying that there's this thing where China wants to be the factory of the world, and that's entirely possible. But right now, the primary ambition that they have is to figure out how to make a transition to 25% of their vehicles being EVs by 2025. And they've already tried the route of just letting their folks address that. But the reality is that that hasn't worked out very well. And in order to get to their goals, that's why you're seeing them allowing Tesla to own 100% of their facility, and they're able to get the funding to do all manner of how they're going to successfully execute. Just one other side note here that we've already talked about in our previous show, there's a discussion of what's going to happen with the supply chain. And the answer is that they've actually built a supply chain village to support the success of the initial plant. And so, the bottom line is that, in every way possible, the Chinese are supporting how Tesla is going to both enter China and be extremely successful. And, it's going to be an amazing circumstance to watch as this factory comes online and starts to produce at a large number. The one fly in the ointment that I see that I was expecting, and I've been expecting for the last 2 years, is that there's a discussion of this factory in Shanghai being called the Gigafactory 3. Well, if you think about it, the Gigafactory, which produces battery in Reno, is actually producing batteries. Elon Musk has indicated that the batteries for this facility are going to come from the United States, Japan, and then partially 2170 style batteries that are built in China. But the construction or the building of those batteries, I believe, will be with their Panasonic partnership that extends into China. Awesome. So all this said, I have to say that I've read the numbers, I've seen the data, and I'm a skeptic, but in terms of where the Chinese want to go and what Tesla is capable of currently, and let's not forget, Tesla has 89 service facilities, something like 2,000 charging facilities all over China. There's a huge Tesla footprint that supports the ability to execute this large number of vehicles entering the marketplace that we've discussed. So, as I said, I'm having a little bit of cognitive dissonance because I've seen the numbers. I've seen what China is spending to make this transition to 25% of their cars being EVs by 2025 with Tesla as the primary partner. And I'm from Missouri. You got to show me this is going to be the reality. And so, the last sort of note that comes to mind is the fact that until this factory is built, because of tariff and other taxes, Tesla's entering the Chinese market have been running at a price point that's about double that of domestic manufacturers. Once Tesla enters, it not only has no tariffs, but it's also getting certain EV incentives that further lower the price until they exhaust those. And so, any rate, all this said, you're funny, Thaddeus. He's in Missouri. So I have to say that I've seen the numbers and I don't believe them. But nonetheless, the numbers are happening dramatically. And then just to throw in a bonus item there is, as you know, in rare earth metals, China is big there as well. So the ability of China to source the raw materials necessary to build the batteries, lurk. Like I said, the only fly I see, in the ointment is that China has wanted Tesla to build both the battery factory as well as the production facility in Shanghai. And Tesla has coyly decided to simply increase the size of production at the Gigafactory in Nevada rather than shift to build a Gigafactory in China currently. I guess that might change in the future, but the worry I had was the technology there's a lot of non-patented processes that are part of the Gigafactory building in Reno. And my worry was, as both the manufacturing of the vehicles and the manufacturing of the battery was moved to China, you would suddenly have all of their processes replicated and therefore copied by Chinese competitors and therefore destroy Tesla in the process. So the fact that, we're just getting production there and the batteries are being shipped from Nevada, it's just a matter of increasing the amount of batteries. I believe that the sales are there to be had by Tesla in China right now, and it's just a matter of get the factory done and let production start, because this is going to be mind-blowing. So this does, anyway, I just wanted to note that usually we try to cover 2 or 3 topics. The other item that was noted was a question mark about what my thoughts were on the 95,000 units produced. As we've discussed in our previous show, I think the 95,000 units produced is excellent. Produced and delivered, by the way. There's a bunch of vehicles that were still in transit that did not occur. I have to say that I like saying intelligent things, but there's also something called stupid comments from smart people. And here's what I mean by that. Tesla, as you'll notice, is the only manufacturer in the world that on a regular basis releases its production numbers Um, uh, um, you know, they released their production numbers, but it's kind of like it's like an unclothed person. Let's put it that way, meaning that on the surface the numbers were excellent. Um, did it cost you nothing for that? Did you achieve that with a decent profit margin? You know, that is that's the mind-blowing part. Is there's this huge issue of we're excited about the fact that there's a good number out there, but was it executed in a way that makes sense for the company? And hence my concern of Tesla releasing these numbers is it's great to get a nice stock push and it's nice to announce good information, but until you place this with the rest of the information about, how much debt do they have? Are they paying the people who provided them the materials to build those cars? There's just all these unknowns. So for me, I can celebrate the 95,000 number because it's way better than the 60K that we saw previously. However, I'd have to say until we find out what the whole picture looks like by seeing the accounting that comes with the earnings, we're all totally, I feel like we're semi in the dark. We've got one number, but both the other numbers as well as the forecast on what the other numbers, both revenue, sales and profits are going to be, I believe that we're all in this like mystery zone. So my feeling on the numbers is this: as long as Tesla doesn't go out of business between now and when China starts to kick in, who cares? I mean, as long as, the stock price stays solid, the company stays solvent to roll into the huge growth that they're about to experience. And once that growth is seen, everybody, including investors, will be excited about the stock. I just think that, everything that's going on, including these good numbers, is a stopgap to what happens in what we see in China. And then once we see the reality of how China is going to hit Tesla's balance sheet, I think it's going to push the stock up quite nicely. But as I said, I'm from Missouri like Thaddeus. I can see the data, I can hear the conversation, but we need to see some results that support all of the conclusions that we're arguing. And as we see the follow through, I think we can therefore, agree that this is a huge W and totally unexpected by me. So terrific 95K numbers. Would love to see the rest of the accounting that goes with it. We'll see what happens. And then the other thing that nobody's discussing, and I haven't seen the photos for it, is, come now, this is China. We all know that entire factory built in Shanghai, there's a duplicate of it that's been produced someplace else in China that's waiting on watching what Tesla does to roll cars out in the exact same manner. So that's one of my biggest worries, is what happens when the Chinese decide to simply build one or two more of these factories and simply mirror everything Tesla does via NIO or one of the other sort of Chinese-held or owned manufacturers. And so that's another fly in the ointment that we'll have to, that's why it's a wait and see for these numbers to really come out, because you could potentially, just be seeding your competitor in terms of every detail of how you operate. So it pays to be a skeptic, because we have all seen a lot of good companies go and just get mashed by the machine of China. But the early signs are mind-blowing. And I'm excited because as we see these numbers start to roll out, I think you're going to see some dramatic moves in the stock price as a result in a positive direction. So terrific news. As soon as that first car rolls out of the Shanghai factory, I think we're entering a completely different world for Tesla. And again, we're going to keep doing research and keep analyzing what's going on in this arena and go from there. Looking forward to any and all of your comments regarding this. Obviously I saw Sean, Donovan, Thaddeus, a number of you say hello. I appreciate your doing so. I kind of feel like our show has been sneaking too much into China, but the thing that I'm seeing right now is that, there are different ways to get ahead of getting a Tesla. You could say, why don't we pay $200,000 in advance? How about we say, why don't we build you a factory so you can sell cars in our country? So China has done a great job of stepping to the head of that class, and they're putting up a lot of cash to make it happen. I think it actually kind of makes sense, because what's $3 to $5 billion on Tesla when you have this huge amount of money that you've spent on domestic manufacturers that's really not worked out very well? So yeah, I agree with you, Sean. China is huge. Tesla is going to be doing some interesting stuff in China, and I think that the Chinese consumers recognize the quality that Tesla delivers, and also the lack of quality that's delivered by the competing firms. So we'll see what happens. At any rate, I wanted to wish you all happy holidays. It's July 4th. Thank you for taking time out to visit with us. Even though we have a thesis of how this all works, and we've got Chinese numbers to back it up, as I've discussed with you, I have to say that I'm maintaining until that car starts rolling out of China and we see how Tesla just takes 50% market share in China in the process, which equates to 1 million cars a year. I'd have to say I'm going to maintain my skeptical side of things, and as those start rolling out, I think we're going to see some massive jumps in the value of that stock. And thank you for your recommendation that China wants to control the world in this regard. But the reality is that for their ambitions and the number of cars they need to put in place, there isn't enough production yet for them to be able to ship it out elsewhere. At any rate, again, Michael, Sean, all my friends online, thanks again. Please remember to do your 25 leg lifts with a 5-pound weight on each leg. Don't go to bed within 2 hours of eating, preferably 4 hours so the food can digest. And look forward to any and all comments, because I've seen the numbers and I'm skeptical of my own show. So I hope you are too, because it'll generate a better discussion. Have a great day. In Germany, we say tschüss, macht's gut. In France, au revoir. Spanish, adios. Lahitro, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi. In Jamaica, we say enough respect, walk, good man. Ni hao ma. Hey, if in DC, hit us up. Happy to visit with you.